Hey there, I am Sunny Brigham. I am one of the supervisors here at the Nutrition and Herbal Collective. And, did we start early? I'm doing live a little bit different today. Normally I do it through Zoom into Facebook, but that proved to be a bit of a challenge for me today. For some reason, I am having some tech difficulties. Okay, but it looks like we're live. So we are totally okay, and I am going to keep talking. So we are deep in CNS prep season right now because the CNS exam is coming up in December. And there is normally quite a bit of anxiety that happens around the CNS exam, whether it is not knowing what to study or where to start. Am I studying the right things? How the heck am I going to remember all of this information? And so I totally get it. Your thoughts and feelings are valid. It is a very anxiety inducing exam. So what we're going to talk about today is how to study the micronutrients. So micronutrients are super, super important as a nutrition professional for many things and many reasons, but they typically are a big piece of the exam. Now, obviously, I've seen the exam once, and that's when I took it. So I never really know, 100% what's on the exam, but micronutrients are a big portion of what we do as nutrition professionals, and they more than likely, make up a large portion of the exam. And so studying them is really important. It's very, very important that we have a good understanding of micronutrients. And so when you're thinking about, but Sunny, how am I going to remember all of these things that I have to remember? The nutrient, the symptoms of deficiencies, how is somebody going to feel when they're lacking a specific nutrient, or what on your nutrition focused physical exam will you see when somebody is lacking a particular nutrient? What are the drug nutrient interactions? What medications deplete specific nutrients? And then are there any interactions with specific medications? Like with some blood thinners, we don't necessarily want to have somebody consume a supplement that contains vitamin K because of the blood thinning properties. So remembering all of that is really important. So I'm going to go over a couple of techniques, and I'll share my absolute favorite all-time resource in studying micronutrients. So a couple of techniques that I think is really important, and one that is really important for all studying processes of the exam, is you have to remember self-care. Now, most people taking the exam are probably in some form of supervision program, so they're trying to see clients, they're trying to gain their hours, they're trying to learn all of these things, and then they're also trying to study for the exam at the same time. And what goes out the window? Same thing with all of our clients when they get stressed and overwhelmed is self-care. We don't prioritize self-care. And I know you're thinking, oh, Sunny, that's not going to help me study the micronutrients. It totally is. Promise you it is. You have to remember to take care of yourself. Are you hydrated? Are you getting your own nutrients in through food? Are you making sure that you're prioritizing sleep? Are you taking plenty of breaks? Because an exhausted brain is not going to remember all of the things that you need to remember. So at this point right now, if you're utterly exhausted, you're taxed to the max, your anxiety is up here, and you're trying to study, just take a step back and think to yourself, what can I do for myself today to help me better retain this information? And I think it's the number one thing that you can do to remember anything that you're studying for. So don't think oh, I'll take care of it. I'll sleep after the exam. Let's not approach it that way. Let's self-care first. Okay. So for me personally, I am a memorization person. That is how I study best, is I have to memorize, because the way that I learn is by doing. If I'm not doing it, then I don't really have a full understanding of it. Now, some people can read a textbook and be like, oh yeah, I totally get it. That goes with this, that applies to this, this is when you would use that. That's not how my brain works. My brain works as I read a textbook or a piece of information, and it's all up here, and I have no idea what the heck I just read or what any of it means. I have to do. I am a doer. So in order for me to truly learn information, I have to do the things. If I don't have the opportunity to do the things to fully solidify it, then I have to memorize. So if you don't know what type of learner you are, I would try to figure that out. Are you a doer? Are you a reader? Are you a memorizer? Figure out what type of learner you are, because that's going to help you along the way. So because I know that I am a doer, When I am learning, or when I was learning micronutrients, I used, so in our CNS test prep course, if you are enrolled in the test prep course, you have micronutrient handouts, you have a table with all of the micronutrients, you've got note takers that you can utilize. I would fill out those as much as possible and study from this sheet of paper. Now, if you're a doer like me, think about, if you're thinking about vitamin A, where is this nutrient made? Where is it converted? What types of foods do we get it in? And how do I have clients right now that I think are probably deficient in vitamin A based on what I'm learning about this nutrient? And then I can say, oh, well, that makes sense. This client is struggling with, poor liver function, or their liver is kind of sluggish. Maybe they need a little extra A, or maybe they don't. Maybe they've got so much vitamin A buildup because their liver isn't kind of recycling it out that maybe they're on the verge of kind of vitamin A toxicity. So I kind of think about those things and think about how this would apply to particular clients. If I have a client that's on a statin, what medications or what nutrients are depleted by a statin? If I have clients that are on oral birth controls or amlodipine or any other type of medication, what I'm studying, how does that apply to the clients that I'm seeing in person? That helps me. On the nutrients that are kind of obscure, that we don't really see a whole lot, like, there's some minerals that we see pretty frequently where people need more of, like sometimes iron, sometimes calcium. But do we really see a biotin deficiency? I mean, it's just not really like a common deficiency that we see pretty frequently. I mean, people need biotin, right? But is it something that like overtly, like, oh, you've got, cracks in the corners of your mouth, or you've got, white spots on your nails, or you're missing your lunulae, or you've got deep horizontal grooves in your fingernails, or you've got, keratosis pilaris, or KP, or chicken skin, as some people call it. So you have all these things that, tell us that somebody's body is not either getting enough or maybe not absorbing the nutrients that they need, based on what we're seeing, whether the symptoms that they're telling us about, or what their skin or body is showing us, or medications that they're taking that their body is depleting them of these specific nutrients. So in some of those obscure ones that we don't necessarily see really overt symptoms of deficiency, those are the ones that I tend to fall back on memorization. And I used so inside the CNS test prep course, I gave, a note taker. I also gave you a nutrient chart. Those are the things that I studied for the exam. And now for me, when I have to memorize things, I can't read and repeat, read and repeat, read and repeat. I either have to use note cards, and I make myself note cards, or I have to write it down repeatedly. Kind of like, I think about this, like if you've ever watched The Simpsons, and in the beginning, he's, Bart is always writing something on the board over and over and over and over again. That's how I memorize things best. Some people can read something, like my husband is an associator. So he will read something and he will associate it to something in his life. Like, oh yeah, I can remember this because of that. And sometimes that works for people. Totally doesn't work for me. But if you are an associator, I would definitely associate the micronutrients to things in your everyday life that can help you remember stuff. Some people use mnemonics. Mnemonics don't work for me because I always forget the mnemonic and I forget what they mean. But there's mnemonics for like amino acids, there's mnemonics for certain nutrients. But I think personally, the two best ways to study micronutrients is one, association to current clients. If you can pick out signs and symptoms of nutrient deficiencies, whether it's in their physical symptoms or in the symptoms that they have talked to you about, maybe it's an internal symptom like fatigue, or maybe they're exhibiting symptoms of a sluggish liver, and that means maybe their phase 1, phase 2 detox process isn't working very well. If they have genetic data or information, or maybe their food diary is really deficient in particular nutrients, and those nutrients line up with the symptoms. If you can associate what you're learning on your micronutrients to clients that you have worked with, if you don't have a lot of clients, can you associate them to yourself, to a partner, to your spouse, to children, to nieces, nephews, to parents? If you can associate it to a particular person or something that you have dealt with in person, that cements it in the brain a lot better. Well, that's really the second way, because remember, the first way is self-care. And then the second way is association. And then the third way is memorization. So some of those obscure nutrients, memorizing them. Like drug nutrient interactions and depletions are really difficult. Some of the really common ones, like you'll see a lot of clients that are on a statin or that's on a hypertensive medication, or oral birth control. Those are pretty standard. You will see a lot of them. But there are some really obscure medications out there that you may only have one client on that medication every 5 years. So trying to memorize those kind of obscure pieces of information work best. And understanding how you memorize. Like some people can read and remember. For me, like I said, I have to make note cards and use them frequently. Or I have to write it over and over and over again. And then another way is education, right? So sometimes when we educate people on the things that we're learning, that helps us cement it in our mind. So I know this is a little kind of odd, but if you are really struggling to learn micronutrients, why not make a micronutrient presentation and give it to your family? Set it up and teach them about the micronutrients, because when we can teach those things, we kind of carry them a little bit longer. Sometimes, like when I teach things to interns, I definitely learn and remember, because when you teach, you remember. So those are probably the best ways, I think, to study for the micronutrients. Is first, self-care. If you're not taking care of yourself right now, if you're not eating well, sleeping well, doing things to help manage anxiety around the test, I would prioritize that. That's super, super important. The second way is association. So associating the micronutrients either to current clients that you've had or past clients. And if you don't have a ton of clients, friends, family, yourself, a parent, anything that you can associate it to another person. You can be at the grocery store and walk around and somebody could be in a tank top and say, oh, they've got keratosis pilaris, that's this nutrition, I might recommend this. So associating those things the best that you can. If those don't work, memorization, learn how you memorize best. So again, for me, it's note cards or writing over and over and over again. Those are the ways that I kind of memorize best. And then education. So educating other people on what you are learning. I remember when I was in school, I used to come out of my office all the time and tell my husband, like, I just learned this super cool thing. And then I kind of like rehash it. And that helped me remember those sorts of things. And like I said, I'm a doer, so I have to do to really solidify information. And sometimes teaching is a way of doing. Okay, so those are the best ways I think of studying micronutrients. My favorite resource, and I don't have it here right now, and I will see if I can screen share. Again, you have to bear with me. This is a new way of doing. I think I saw a screen share. If not, I'll keep looking for it while I'm talking, is Burgerstein's, and I will pull up the name. It is my all-time favorite micronutrient handbook. It's super cheap, and you can get it on Amazon used. And a little birdie once told me that if you type in like Burgerstein's micronutrients free PDF, there may or may not be a free, PDF out there in the interwebs to download so that you don't have to buy it. But if you need the physical book, you can get a used copy pretty cheaply on Amazon. So it's called Burgerstein's Handbook of Nutrition, Micronutrients, and Prevention and Therapy of Disease. And I will copy this into the comments since I cannot figure out how to screen share right now, because I'm not using Zoom at the moment. So I put the name of that handbook in the comments. It is just a very straightforward way of kind of remembering the micronutrients, or the way that he delivers it is just a super straightforward way of remembering it or teaching it. Like, he doesn't go into the background mechanisms of all of that, because when you're studying for the exam, that's not necessarily super important when it comes to micronutrients, but more so the nutrient, the symptoms, signs and symptoms of deficiency, where you find it in food, and what drugs it interacts with, drugs and herbs it interacts with. And his book has it all. He's got some charts in the back as far as common medications and nutrient depletions. He doesn't have much in there about herbs, but then he breaks down each nutrient, and each page looks the same, which feeds my soul. Is he'll have the nutrient, and they'll have foods, symptoms of depletion, or what your body will present with when it's depleted, best places to get it, and then he moves on to the next one. So super straightforward, super simple, and those are my favorite resources. So just to recap one more time, self-care, super, super important. Do not underestimate it, because a well-fed body is going to have a well-remembering brain. So self-care, association to current clients or friends, family member, memorization, or teaching. So teaching it to your family and friends, creating a little presentation for yourself. Those are the ways that are you're best going to remember that information. And then using the resource of Bergerstein's Handbook for Nutrition, Micronutrients is really, really excellent. All right, so those are my favorite ways to study the micronutrients. Take a deep breath. You have just over a month to the exam. You totally got this. Just remember to prioritize self-care, and I will see you guys around. Bye.